Hi, and welcome to In the Crease with Karl Moeglein. I'm your host, Karl Moeglein. Today we're going to be talking about the lockout and whether the two biggest events in the regular season, the All-Star Game and the Winter Classic, will even happen. Then we'll go on to the KHL and how they will try to be taking players away in this lockout and make this situation the best for them. Then I'll take you to the fantasy leagues where I'm going to tell you a secret to having a great fantasy team. And then to close it up, I'll be talking about all the individual trophies in the NHL season and my predictions on them. But first, to free agency. We'll start with some minor leaguers who have been signed. The Canucks signed their third goalie, Addie Lack, to $850,000 contract. Also, the Predators have signed a veteran defenseman, Scott Hannon, to a one-year, $1 million contract. He has had 552 penalty minutes in his 908-game career. The Avs have signed Jaguar to an extension to 2013-2014. Jean-Sebastian Jaguar has been big for them last season, finding that starting job after earlier in his career being the big backstop for the Ducks of Anaheim. He is 8th among active goaltenders in career games and shutouts, and 10th in wins among active goaltenders. Pretty good for a guy who, is pretty good. But of course, our biggest story of the night is Shane Doan, and he is the captain of the Phoenix Coyotes, and he is the biggest free agent on the market. His agent has said that he will make a decision before the September 15th deadline of the new CBA, wanting to get a contract in before that CBA expires, making sure he gets, as good of a contract as he can, doesn't want anything to be coming in his way after that could be unknown. Dunn was the seventh pick in the first round of the 1995 NHL draft of the Winnipeg Jets, who became the Phoenix Coyotes. He has never played a game with any other franchise than this. Well, we'll be right back after this commercial break. This is In the Crease with Karl Moeglein. Hi, and welcome back to In the Crease with Karl Moeglein as we continue through our look at the next NHL season. But now, will there even be an NHL season, as there is a lockout looming if the NHLPA and the NHL cannot come to a new deal? Of course, in 04-05, there was a lockout caused because the owners could not come to a decision with the players. That was huge, and it took a big hit into the NHL fan base. After that, of course, the Lightning Cup team. And a big thing about this is, even if it's a shortened season, Commissioner Gary Bettman has said that there may be no All-Star Game. This is a huge hit for one of the most popular events. And, even worse, he said that the Winter Classic may be canceled, a huge fan favorite which is held every year on New Year's Day for the past few years. And it was to be held at the Big House in Michigan. With the Detroit Red Wings and the Maple Leafs, that could cost the NHL quite a bit of revenue, after how big that stadium is and how many tickets would be sold. Well, it's obvious after how big that stadium is, over 100,000 seats. That's huge. On to the KHL. The KHL is a league in Russia, including a couple teams in Latvia as well. It is the Continental Hockey League, and, it's trying to dethrone the NHL as the biggest hockey league in the world. If there's a lockout, there's a definite chance of many NHL players going to the KHL, including big stars Evgeny Malkin and Alexander Ovechkin, who are both Russian and two of the biggest players in the game right now, actually. Now, they are both looking into contracts, and it looks as though Evgeny Malkin has actually now signed. He has signed with Metalburg Magnitogorsk and in the Continental Hockey League. And of course, he does have that clause, though, that if the NHL season does resume, he can jump there right away. And Ovechkin is currently in a debate with CSKA Moscow, which is one of the premier teams in the KHL, looking to get one of the premier players from the NHL. Of course, the KHL has been luring players from the NHL the last couple of years with more money than the NHL can pay them, although the level of competition is thought to be not quite as sharp as the NHL. Also, in European hockey leagues, the Swedish top hockey league has said that they will not have contracts which are without clauses. Basically, a player can't sign with them and leave halfway through the season. They will not allow that, which means that most NHL players will not be going there, as they definitely want to be getting back to their own NHL teams. Also, many smaller players may not be able to get out clauses on the big KHL teams, and this is a big worry for Nail Yakupov, the number 1 pick of Edmonton. He has looked into the KHL. He is Russian, although the last couple seasons he's played with the Sarnia Singh of the OHL. If he goes to KHL, he might not be able to get an out clause, and that would be a big hit for Edmonton. But he could also play in Canada in the Ontario Hockey League for his former junior team, the Sarnia Sting, who could definitely use him after he was the OHL Player of the Year last year. And on to the fantasy world. The fantasy teams are really hard to pick. Most people would go for a point scorer or goal scorer, somebody like Daniel Sedin. I have to agree that those should be early picks, but one of my things that I do when I pick my fantasy teams is definitely look at 2 main stats that are often overlooked. That is PIM and plus minus. Now, PIM is penalty in minutes, and plus minus is basically if you're on the ice when a goal is scored, you get a plus. Well, if it's scored for your team, but if you're on the ice when there's a goal scored for the other team, you get a minus. Basically, a showing of if you're on the ice, something good happens. If you're on the ice, something bad happens. So, some of the biggest players in PIM have troubles with plus minus. People who are at over 200. Last year, there's only 2 of them. Zach Ronaldo for the Philadelphia Flyers and Derek Dorsett for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They both topped 200, and well, they're both big, tough guys. Of course, if you look down a little bit, down with last year's standings, there's Steve Ott with Buffalo. He was plus 5 last year, which isn't great, but the 156 penalty minutes he put up are outstanding and can definitely help any fantasy team. Another guy I look at is Brandon Dubinsky of the Columbus Blue Jackets, who has was plus 16 last year and had a total of 110 PIM. That is huge. Looking at plus minus, really you can go with most of the Boston Bruins will have a high plus minus. The top 5 spots were all taken by Bruins last season. And a big one with PIM is you can go with Zdeno Chara or Brad Marchand, who both had over 85 penalty minutes. That's not great, but it's enough to really help a team that is, struggling. If your fantasy team is struggling, you really want to find those players that can get you in those stats that you're losing every week. The greatest thing about Zdeno Chara is he's a defenseman, but he also had 52 points last season, which is a very high total for a defenseman. Of course, first picks you probably should still be staying for your first picks is, the Stamkoses, the Malkins, the Crosbys, and the Ovechkins. For goalies, I would gotta go Quick and Lundqvist as my top 2. Those 2, the top 2 in the Vezina last year. And, of course, Daniel Sedin, the top point scorer. But one of my big players who wasn't super high last year but had a great year last year, he had 93 points, is Claude Giroux of the Philadelphia Flyers. He had a huge season last year with those 93 points, and he is, well, one of my top 10 players probably now. Of course, I believe in picking probably a forward in the first round, but maybe a goalie in the second round, as a goalie can really carry your team. Hopefully, you want to make sure your goalie is playing every game, basically, say, 60 games a season. So look at that when you're trying to pick them, and see if they've got a history of injuries. Say, Rick DiPietro is probably not your best pick because of, well, he's often injured himself. My third goalie is Pekka Rinne. He's down in Nashville. He had a great season. You got to look at Ilya Brzgalov. And, Jaguar, who I've talked about earlier, definitely could be thought of as a guy to look at. Well, here, that will wrap up my talk on fantasy. We're going to go to commercial, but when we get back, I will be talking about all the big trophies, the ones we had next season. This is In the Crease with Karl Moeglein. I'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to In the Crease with Karl Moeglein. As we go to the individual trophies of next season, I'm going to be starting with some of the smaller ones. I'm going to start with the Jack Adams, which is awarded to the NHL coach, who's been, they say, as it says on the official website, is awarded to the NHL coach, a judge to have contributed the most to his team's success. Basically, a coach who really made this team win. Somebody who took a team maybe that was failing, say Ken Hitchcock and a Daryl Sutter of last year, and really turned those teams around. Those are really common picks for that trophy. I think Daryl Sutter will take it. I think Kings are gonna have another great season, probably taking the Pacific Division. I just think Daryl Sutter is such a big key for them, along with Jonathan Quick as well. Then there's also the Frank J. Selke. It is the best forward who excels at defense. I've got to stay with Patrice Bergeron on this one. He went last year with Boston, and just a really solid guy. And then there is, of course, the Lindsay Award. This is the outstanding player as selected by the Players Association, which means that the players really pick it. It's an award that people, if you're more liked, sometimes you'll get a couple more votes, and it's really for the guy who excels most. I think if Crosby stays healthy, he takes this, mainly because he's loved by players, not loved. He's liked by the players. People enjoy him, and I just think the players, if he's healthy, will award that trophy to him. Up to the Bill Masterson, it is awarded to the player who best exemplifies the qualities of sportsmanship and dedication to hockey. This is always a really hard one to call. Another guy who really comes to mind when you think of that is like the Lidstroms, or the guy who won it last year, Max Pacioretty. Excuse me if I mispronounced that. I've got to go to actually maybe surprise people, but Zetterberg, Henrik Zetterberg of the Red Wings. He's really a great guy. He's got great sportsmanship, and he's got that competitiveness that I really think could definitely boost him up. Now we are up to some of the bigger trophies. The Norris Trophy is awarded to the best defenseman who demonstrates throughout the season the greatest all-around ability. Carlson took it last year of the Senators. I just don't see how anybody's going to dethrone him from the title of that. He really is a great defenseman, offensive defenseman, anything you really want to say about him. I mean, he led defenseman in scoring, and that's normally the person who takes it, the defenseman who leads in scoring, as long as they're pretty solid, so I doubt it will go to anybody else. The Art Ross Trophy is, this is awarded to the player who leads the league in total points at the end of the regular season, and this has got to be going to Henrik Sedin of the Vancouver Canucks with his brother, a very close third or fourth probably, Daniel. They are both dominant forces. They are twins. They are Swedish. Yeah, you can't really stop Swedish twins, can you? They are both been in the top 5 the last few years, and I just don't see how Daniel can't win this trophy with his brother alongside him this year. And as we go along, the Carler Memorial Trophy for the league's outstanding rookie.